About a couple of weeks before this episode that is currently running, a federal judge called President Trump's order to end birthright citizenship, quote unquote, blatantly unconstitutional. And I don't know how many people are aware, but that's basically federal judge speak for we're not changing that rule. And it got me thinking that I don't think the Constitution is seen the way it probably should be. And I got to talk about it because we are heading to a bit of a constitutional crisis in this country, and it's worth knowing on some level why that might be important. So I'm speaking out about the Constitution of the United States of America. What the heck am I talking about? Well, the Constitution of the United States of America is two things at once, for the most part. It's a legal document that outlines the rules and laws in this country, and it's also a document that establishes that this country exists. And so you can imagine that for that reason, it definitely has an immense amount of importance and is something that shouldn't be carelessly thought of. But right now, there's an administration in the government that is doing that very thing. And it should be noted that there's a very specific reason why that is happening. As I stated, the Constitution is one, a legal document. It outlines the overall rules as a foundation for this country. So, part of the rules for this country are freedom of speech. Unlawful search and seizure is not permitted. We no longer sanction the quartering of soldiers. Yeah, that's a rule that's still on the books. To just throw out there that the Constitution is not necessarily a perfect document. It is a revolutionary one, though, and it did establish what many people don't know is actually one of the oldest nation states in the world when you think about it politically. And speaking of politically, this document is not necessarily like intractable. It can be changed, but there's a process. It doesn't surprise me that one of our political parties wants to disregard the process and do whatever they choose. And well, it kind of reveals why we have this. And more so to the point, the second thing that the Constitution is should definitely preclude this from happening. And something that is the framework that establishes a nation is something that is not only not easily changed and not only comes in high regard, but it has processes within it that need to be adhered to by everyone, including the person with the highest office in the land. And it seems pretty interesting that a lot of people, I feel, kind of detached from this document as establishing our nation, but it did. And to the point that the presidential oath includes the terms of upholding the Constitution. And it's in there because the Constitution's so essential. And we're headed for a crisis within it. And it's mainly because the Constitution definitely guards against two very specific things. And that is naked and overt corruption from the White House and private citizens being employed by the government to do things they're not officially able to do. And we are definitely heading down that road with what is happening currently. So it's important to remember that the Constitution is really important and it shouldn't be changed unless there's a specific process. Now, part of the specific process is holding these people accountable, which is why I think things seem to be going by the wayside. But it's also worth remembering that without that Constitution, not only do we not have a legal framework for how things are supposed to go, but we don't have a thing that establishes our nation as a nation. That can only lead to one thing, and that's just utter chaos and certain anarchy. And I'm sure I don't have to tell the average United States of American citizen how horrible things would be without that legal framework to protect you. Think about how different your life would be if you didn't have the freedom of speech, or if you didn't have legal protections against corrupt law enforcement. And, even if it's not strictly in the Constitution, there are elements that help us that extend from it as a platform, like the reason why our food and our medicine is inspected is because of an interpretation of the Constitution. It's the same reason why we have things like the Social Security Act, which is pretty important, and why we have, our national defense. These are things that are not just crucial, but essential. And to see people gamble with those elements is more than disconcerting. And I'm sure I don't have to tell most people who would listen to this that not having a constitution that functions well is a danger to all of us in some way. And to be honest, I'm not certain how to fight against it, but I know what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do everything I can within the political spectrum to uphold the one rule, the one outline we all agree with. I mean, even the establishment of this country needed paperwork, and, this country's all about paperwork, and we need to hold that paperwork sacred. And we can't let anybody damage it for their own personal gain, which is what these government stooges are starting to do. Look, alls I know is that every country has their version of this, and they hold it sacred, as do we. But they definitely wouldn't compromise any of those principles based on how they feel. And us heading down that path is only going to lead to political turmoil inside of our borders and outside. And I know for a fact, no one wants to live that way. Thank you very much for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave a comment, start a conversation. That's what this channel is all about. Speaking out is about speaking out. Thank you very much again for listening, and I will catch you on the next video.